I kissed her forehead the same night I found out she was sleeping with my best friend. I poured her a glass of wine, told her I missed her, and sat beside her on the couch like I hadn't just read every message she thought she deleted. She leaned her head on my shoulder like everything was normal, like I was still the fool she believed would never find out. But what she didn't know was that I already had a plan. My name's Nathan. I'm 40. I run a logistics company I built from scratch, the kind of business where everything needs to be precise: routes, timing, trust. Especially trust. And I'd spent over a decade thinking I had that with my wife, Claire. We met when we were young, me still grinding, her working in finance. She was smart, magnetic, polished in a way that made everyone around her try a little harder just to be in her orbit. And I loved that about her. I loved how she lit up a room, how she challenged me, how she made me feel like we were building something solid, something built to last. But somewhere along the way, the laughter got shorter, the glances fewer, the silence between us got longer, and I kept chalking it up to stress, to work, to life, until one afternoon, her phone lit up on the counter while she was in the shower. It wasn't just one message. It was a full thread. From him, Jake, my best friend since college. The guy who was the best man at our wedding. The guy who'd been in our house more times than I could count. The guy who, according to those texts, had been sleeping with my wife for months. Felt like the floor dropped out from under me. But I didn't say a word. Because the man they thought I was, the trusting, busy husband always focused on work, too loyal to look too closely, that man was gone the moment I read those texts. And the man who took his place, he was going to take back everything they tried to steal. But first, I had to make her believe I didn't know. I had to smile through the lies. I had to pretend I was healing. I had to act like forgiveness was even on the table. Because sometimes, the cleanest revenge starts with a whisper. Not a war. They thought I'd fall apart. They thought I'd never find out. But I didn't break. I just got quiet, and when I get quiet, I start building. Drop a comment if you've ever played along, just long enough to take your power back. Subscribe to hear what happens when I begin setting the trap. One fake smile at a time. The morning after I read the messages, I made her breakfast. Pancakes, just the way she liked, extra butter, maple syrup on the side, strawberries cut into hearts like I used to do when we first got married. She looked surprised, then suspicious, but I just smiled. Thought we could try again, I said. She blinked once, then nodded, and just like that, she let her guard down. You see, people who cheat, people who betray you that deeply, they don't fear you. They pity you. They think your loyalty makes you weak, that your kindness means you'll never have the stomach to hit back. But what Claire forgot is that I don't hit back. I build. And I had just begun laying the foundation. That same day, I called my financial advisor and began separating every account with my name on it. Not illegally, not recklessly, just proactively. I locked my credit, redirected business payments through my private LLC, and took inventory of every joint asset we owned. The business was mine, founded before we were married. But the house, the vehicles, the vacation fund? She had her name on enough of it to walk away comfortable if I didn't act fast. So I acted. I stopped contributing to the shared account. I rerouted my paycheck. I spoke with my lawyer and quietly revised my will. Everything I once put in her name, out of love, I put back in mine out of survival. And through it all, I played my part. I told her I wanted counseling. I said I'd been distant and wanted to reconnect. I took her out to dinner. Let her talk about rebuilding trust like she hadn't torn it apart in the first place. She smiled more, slept better, even posted a photo of us on social media, captioned, "Working through the hard things, stronger every day." The comments poured in. "You too give me hope. Real love always wins." They had no idea I was already halfway out the door. But I wasn't just leaving. I was taking everything with me, not out of spite, not out of rage, but because she'd already made her choice the moment that was her mistake. And mine was pretending I ever truly forgave her. Jake always wanted more than he had. More money, more influence, more status. He admired my life a little too much, flattered my success a little too often. I used to think he was just a supportive friend. But now I saw it clearly. He didn't just want to stand beside me. He wanted to be me. And when he started sleeping with Claire, I guess in some twisted way he thought he finally was. So I decided to give him the opportunity to step into my shoes, just long enough to walk him off a cliff. It started with a lunch meeting. I told him I was expanding the business, opening a second location, possibly franchising, and needed someone I trusted to oversee the new operation. He was flattered, said he always believed in my vision, said he wanted in. I told him there'd be a partnership offer, a stake in the new branch, a chance to finally stop working for people and start owning something. He jumped at it. Over the next few weeks, I let him shadow me, gave him access to curated files, fake projections, dressed-up data. Just enough to make him feel important, but not enough to notice it was all carefully engineered to expose how easily he could be manipulated. Then I drew up the contract. It was dense, full of legal jargon, but intentionally vague in just the right places. My lawyer helped me write it, legally binding, airtight, and structured in a way that if he defaulted or backed out early, all of his investment would revert back to me. Every dollar. And I knew Jake. I knew he'd rush. I knew he wouldn't read the fine print. Because that's the thing about greedy people. They skim over the parts that don't serve their fantasy. So he signed it and transferred the money. $75,000. His life savings. His all-in play to become the businessman he thought I already was pretending not to be. He never once questioned why I didn't ask Claire to be involved. Never once thought about the timing. Never once considered that I was smiling the same way he smiled when he thought I'd never find out. And me? I just shook his hand and said, "Welcome to the team," because he wasn't just my ex-best friend anymore. He was my newest employee, and he didn't even know it yet. The shift started small. A password that suddenly didn't work. A bank statement that didn't look quite right. A missed email from our mortgage company, forwarded only to me. Claire brushed it off at first. Glitches. Oversights. A busy week. But I saw it in her eyes. The flicker of doubt. The quiet unease of a woman who realized something was moving beneath her feet, and she didn't know who was pulling the strings. Then came the real moment. She walked into my home office one night while I was typing up a vendor contract. "You moved the retirement account," she said, trying to sound casual. I didn't flinch. "I did." She blinked, waiting for more. I didn't give her any. "You didn't think to tell me?" she asked. "I did," I said, calm as ever. But then I remembered, "You don't tell me things either." Silence. Heavy. Awkward. Truthful. She tried to pivot, to soften. "I thought we were moving forward." I leaned back in my chair, looked her dead in the eye. "So did I, until I realized you were only moving forward with Jake. I was just the safety net." Her face went pale. She didn't deny it, didn't defend it, just stood there, caught between the version of me she thought she could still control, and the man who had already taken back everything she didn't know she'd lost. From that night on, the energy changed. She started snooping, leaving her phone face up again, as if to prove she had nothing to hide, asking me more questions, watching me a little closer. But it was too late. The accounts were secure. The assets were already protected. Jake was locked into a deal he couldn't undo, and every move she made now was reactive. And me? I just kept smiling. Because nothing rattles someone who manipulates better than realizing they're no longer the smartest one in the room. She thought I was rebuilding our marriage. But I was just. And soon, I'd walk out cleaner than she ever imagined possible. Jake called me 3 times in one day. His voice started confident, then confused, then clipped with panic. At first, it was a simple check-in about the new branch. When things were starting, when he'd meet the vendors, when the first returns would show. I played it cool. Told him we were still in early phases, still aligning logistics, still building momentum. He bought it, of course. He always did. But by the 3rd call, his tone had changed. He'd spoken to someone in accounting, tried accessing files that didn't exist, tried tracking down reports that were nothing more than mock-ups. I could hear the sweat behind the silence when he said, "I just need to make sure my investment is safe." That's when I leaned in. I told him the truth. Not all of it, not yet. Just enough to crack the surface. I said the branch had stalled. I said there were risks. I said it might take longer than expected, and that I hoped he understood. And the moment I hung up, I forwarded our signed agreement to my lawyer, triggering the clause that would begin the process of dissolving his share and transferring full control back to me. Because here's the thing. The deal Jake signed wasn't about opening a new branch. It was about giving me leverage. It was about drawing him in, making him feel powerful, and then locking him into a contract so ironclad that even a seasoned attorney wouldn't find a crack to crawl through. He thought he was stepping into a bigger role. He never realized he was stepping into a trap. Over the next few days, I made moves. Quietly, legally, methodically. Our shared assets were no longer shared. The equity he thought he owned was now dust. And by the time he tried to fight it, I had every document lined up, every signature verified, every step already 10 ahead of him. When he showed up at my office unannounced, face red, words sharp, trying to throw around guilt and betrayal, I just looked at him and said, "You slept with my wife. You didn't think there'd be a receipt." He stood there frozen. Not because I yelled, but because I didn't. Because there's nothing louder than calm in the face of someone else's chaos. And in that moment, Jake realized he hadn't just lost a business deal. He'd lost everything he thought made him a man. Claire always believed she was 2 steps ahead. She thought if she smiled sweetly, kept the peace, acted like the affair never happened, she could hold onto the version of herself the world respected. She didn't realize that while she played house, I was dismantling the foundation from underneath her. The shared credit cards were closed, the accounts frozen, the equity in the house split on paper but already spoken for. She kept asking questions, softly at first, then with more edge. "Why can't I log into the joint account? Have you seen the mail lately? Did you change our insurance policy?" I always gave her the same answer, "I'll look into it." But she knew something was wrong. And when she finally confronted me with her voice raised, eyes wide, and hands shaking, I simply handed her a folder. Inside, copies of the account changes, the legal filings, the asset reallocations. All clean, all final, all dated months ago. Her face went from fury to confusion to fear. "You planned this?" she said, almost breathless. I didn't answer, because the truth was too obvious to explain. She paced the room like she was trying to undo it all just by walking in circles. "You said we were working on us?" she muttered. "You said you forgave me." And I looked her in the eyes for the first time in weeks and told her the truth. "No, Claire, I didn't say I forgave you. I said I wanted to move forward. And I did. Just not with." That's when it sank in. This wasn't a fight. This was the end. Not loud. Not messy. Just done. She wasn't going to lose half. She'd already lost everything. The version of me that would have begged. The version that would have tried to fix it. The man who once saw her as home. All gone. And the man standing in front of her now? He didn't need revenge. He already had the only thing that mattered, freedom. I didn't leave in a storm. There was no yelling. No packed bags in the middle of the night. No dramatic final words. I just stood there one morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunlight pour through the windows she once insisted we install for the warmth. And I realized I felt nothing for that house anymore. No connection. No weight. Just a building full of echoes from a version of me I had already outgrown. Claire stood in the doorway, watching me with eyes that finally looked unsure. No smugness, no confidence, just silence and fear. She didn't ask where I was going. I think she already knew. She tried to say something, maybe to fix it, maybe to soften the blow. But I didn't give her the space. I placed my keys on the counter, next to the file of everything I'd left in order. Legal documents, bank access logs, titles, and one handwritten note that simply read, "You made your choices." I just stopped letting them define mine. Then I turned around and walked out the front door. No bags, no backward glance. Just me, finally free from the weight of pretending everything was okay. And I think that's what hurt her the most. Not that I left, but that I left calm. That I didn't need to punish her. That she didn't get to be the victim this time. That the man who once fought to be understood now had nothing left to say. I stepped into a car I bought in my name, drove away from a house she thought she'd won, and headed straight toward a future she could never follow me into. And the best part? She couldn't blame anyone but herself. Because I never broke a law, never raised my voice, never threw a single punch. I just let her trap herself in the life she built on betrayal, and walked away clean. Starting over didn't look like a movie montage. There was no epic music, no flashy glow-up, no grand transformation. It looked like slow mornings with silence that no longer felt heavy. Like cooking for one and actually enjoying it. Like coming home to an apartment that didn't echo with the weight of lies. It looked like finally breathing without wondering who was watching. Or lying. I didn't jump into a new relationship. I didn't throw myself into distractions. I sat in the stillness. I let it settle. And for the first time in years, I listened to the version of myself I had muted for the sake of being a good husband. The man who had dreams before the detours. The man who used to laugh without measuring the room. The man who trusted himself more than anyone else's approval. That man came back, piece by piece. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with quiet understanding that I hadn't been broken. I had been edited. And now I was rewriting the story on my own terms. Claire never reached out again. Not to apologize. Not to explain. I think, in her own way, she understood the finality of what I did. Because there's something unmistakable about a clean exit. Something that leaves no door cracked open. And when someone who's always controlled the narrative suddenly loses the audience, they fall silent. Jake? Last I heard, he was trying to get his money back through a lawyer who had already told him, "You signed it. That's the thing about pretending to be the smarter man. You eventually meet the real one." And me? I wake up every day without the weight. Without the games. Without the question marks. I live in a smaller space now, but it feels bigger than any house I've ever owned. Because it's filled with truth. With clarity. With peace. And peace? Peace is what revenge pretends to be, but never really is. So no, I didn't ruin their lives. I just took mine back. Quietly. Completely. And without leaving anything behind. They thought they were winning because I didn't fight. But they never realized. The strongest move I made was walking away with everything that truly mattered me. If this story resonated, subscribe for more powerful stories of strength, betrayal, and the kind of justice that doesn't need to scream. Because it already won.